Good morning. I am Steve Weber. Welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. Today is Thursday, October 26th, and it's show number 222. So today I have a guest, John Chapin, going to come up and join us in about 12 minutes or so from now, and I'll do a little monologue to get things started. I'm going to name it. My monologue is going to be, let's put it up there, selling concepts. And that's what I like to think that I do, is sell concepts as opposed to sell directly, direct selling. So we're going to talk about direct selling with our guest, but I'm going to talk a little bit about selling concepts beforehand. So anyway, I've been, let me just explain, I've been doing about 1 or 2 shows a week for the last 6 weeks, 2 months, and things have been evolving behind the scenes, lots of good stuff happening, redoing some websites. So all that is kind of in the works, and it's been keeping my activity and busy, keeping me busy, doing things that hopefully will then launch us into the next phase of this American Gumption project and show as I get ready to take it out on the road. Hopefully, before too long, early next year sometime, I expect to be out there doing that. So anyway, that's what's happening with me in my life, and excited to just have a show today and do a show. We're going to talk about selling. All right, so my monologue is selling concepts, and this is actually from a blog post I wrote, 8-9 years ago, and I was doing a little bit of digging and found it, and so it's still relevant today. So kind of tells you my philosophy about what I did for Bubba Gump, and then what I intend to do as a brand ambassador going forward. So selling concepts. So for 15 years, I was the Forrest Gump impersonator for the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. So what I considered myself, retrospectively, I was an impersonator, an entertainer, but looking backwards on it, really what I was a brand ambassador or a brand representative. And I was a messenger who delivered the concept of fun and good times. That's ultimately what I did. I delivered the message of fun and good times. So shrimp and delicious food was the product that Bubba Gump sold. But I didn't talk about the food or the food or the shrimp. I mean, I did talk about the fried shrimp, barbecued shrimp, coconut shrimp, that sort of thing, but I never specifically talked about the recipes or the menus, that sort of thing. I was strictly, the fun and good times guy. Good service was the standard. Bubba Gump believed that, if you have good food and you have good service, I mean, you had to have good service. That was kind of like that was a non-negotiable. That's what they had to do. So food had to be good, service had to be very good. But the main concept that they were promoting, and that I promoted almost exclusively, or maybe I was selling, was fun and good times. So I strictly sold the concept. I never specifically asked for an order. I never took an order. I never accepted money in exchange for any of the food or photos or the fun that I was doing. My job was strictly to show up there, have fun, plant the seed of good times, and the meal was kind of the fallout of that activity that I did. So anyway, it worked. It worked very, very well, and the company continued to pay me for 15 years, and the fun, because they believed that the fun contributed to the bottom line, and so people loved it. They loved the good times concept, and they were rewarded. People were rewarded by walking through the door and ordering a meal. They had a good meal. They had good service, but they had fun. They had fun. So now, how do you measure fun? Well, you measure it, I guess, by how much, what's your bottom line? Are you making money? Are you selling lots of meals? They did a very good job of that, and the restaurant was packed. There was a big long wait on the weekends. People didn't care. They wanted to be part of it. It was like one of those things that the more people were there, the more people wanted to be there, and so the wait was sometimes an hour long, an hour and a half long, and people put their name down and they walk around and come out and take a picture with Forrest Gump, and away we go. So it worked, and like I said, they continued to pay me for 15 years. So now advertising can take two forms, like a brand awareness or a direct, like get somebody to act and make a purchase right now. And I equate advertising with more like so like brand awareness is more of the concept. You're selling the concept, whereas when you're trying to get somebody to act specifically and do something, that's more of a like a product or service that you want them to buy now. So those are kind of the two forms. And so I would put myself in that first category of the, more of the brand awareness is what I was selling. So you might have a car or a cell phone promotion that really is just designed to get people to be aware of the company, and they just keep pounding the company name into you where they're like, oh, so-and-so Ford, so-and-so Ford, so-and-so Ford. And you don't even hear it. You don't even pay attention to it. It's just in the background. And then all of a sudden you need a car and you're like, oh, I'm going to go to the Ford dealer. I know those guys. I trust them. The other part of it is like the furniture guy who comes on and says, he's screaming and he's all excited and he says, I'm shutting everything down. We're closing the store. We're having a 12-hour blowout. And we've all seen that. It must work because people keep doing it over and over again. But we're slashing prices. Everything must go 12 hours only. And that's designed to really move product, get things out the door, right then and there. So but selling a vision, and that's really what I like to think that I'm doing today. And what I did back then, selling a vision takes time and effort. It's not like that quick sale where you instantly get something from it, but rather it's more of a drip, and you just keep building up that good feeling, goodwill towards it. So I believe that big ideas need to be sold as a concept or as like as a long-term sale. And radical transformative change that happens within an organization, that needs to be sold as a concept. And visions for a better tomorrow need to be sold as a concept. So selling a product, you can do it by, yelling loudly and often. And, a lot of times sofas are sold that way, or Happy Meals, carpet cleaning, lots of different things are sold where it's like, buy now. And, it's that works. But as a consumer, I feel like I'm exhausted from people trying to sell me products and services. And it's gotten to the point where I'm numb to it. I mean, you don't even hear it. It's just all like, rumbling in the background, and you hardly even pay attention to it a lot of times. So you don't, you just don't, the same thing with nowadays, our cell phone, ads, they just keep popping up and they do create awareness because I do have to pay attention to them. Most of the time I'm just waiting for the, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where I can, put the skip thing. So I'm not really I'm just waiting to get through so that I can actually see what I want to see. Now does that work? I guess so, because it just is there. But it's like I said, it's gotten to the point where it's numbing us. And anyway, so fresh, innovative, and transformative ideas capture my attention. Fresh, innovative, and transformative ideas capture my attention. That's what I like working in. And as a brand ambassador, as someone looking to, represent a few brands on a long-term, ongoing basis, promoting, what it is that they do, I feel like I want to help sell the concept, as opposed to, the part where you're getting down there. Now, the reason why I wanted to share that is because it's a little different than what we're going to talk about with our guest, John Chapin. And he's there. I'm going to bring him on a few minutes earlier than I had originally planned, because I'm done my monologue. But the idea is that, selling, direct selling. And we're going to talk about, some of the things that are that have worked for years and years and years and continue to work. And then they're going to talk about maybe how things have changed in the last few months or the last, 18 months since COVID came along. And it's like, okay, how do we, what do we have to do different today that, people are changing all of their habits, and how that might affect us long term. So we'll ask him to bring out his crystal ball and look into it and talk about, like I said, some of the things that haven't changed, but some of the things that maybe are changing as a result of that. So, all righty, well, that's it. That's the monologue on selling concepts. We'll wrap that part up, and we'll bring our guest John Chapin to the American Gumption Morning Show. Where he is? There he is. Hello, John.
Hey, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, doing good. Good morning. How are you doing?
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your taking the time to come and talk to us. We just, we only met a couple weeks ago, and we had some common, background in terms of, organizations that we were involved with, and
Mhm.
things that we were doing with our own careers and goals. And it turned out we both launched, brand new ventures at a time that didn't work out so good. 2008, where we like, okay, we're ready to go tackle the world, and then all of a
Yeah,
sudden, like, the world just sort of stops. So the world stopped, 18 months ago, and has changed there. But hey, we're getting back to some kind of a normal thing. Just the new
sure.
normal keeps going. So anyway, now I'm going to stop talking, I promise, and I'm going to let you talk here. I have two rules, though, as you come onto the show. Are you a rule follower or a rule breaker by general nature, John Chapin? Follower or rule breaker?
A little bit of both. It depends upon the situation.
Okay. Fair enough. So here's the rules. They're pretty simple. The rule is, it's my show, right? I get to make the rules.
Right.
Rule number one is I get to read a bio, which I have here, of who you are, so people will know a little bit about your background. That's easy enough for you to agree to that one, I would think.
I would think so. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Depends on what I say about you, right?
I usually like to give my bio, but that's fine. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll trust you on that one.
Okay, and then, and I'll let you give your bio in more detail. And then there's a song that I play, and it's called the First Time Guest theme song. And it only happens when you're a first time guest. So if we bring you back in a month or in 6 months, we're not allowed to play the song a second time. How's that?
That sounds good. And as I say, the customer's always right, and some people have a challenge with that or whatever. But one of the rules of sales, so you're the customer, it's your show. So whatever rules you have, let's roll with it.
Yeah. Teasing you. All right, let's do it. Now, John Chapin is a sales motivation and performance speaker, teacher, and coach. He has over 29 years of extensive sales and sales management experience. In addition to being a #1 sales rep for most of his 29 plus years in sales, John is also the author of the 2010 Sales Book of the Year, Sales Encyclopedia. Apparently, it's a very thick book. It's got lots of stuff in there. It's an encyclopedia. It's not a book. It's an encyclopedia. And he writes a monthly sales article for over 200 publications across the country. Man, so you write one article and it goes out to 200 different places. Is that what you're saying there with that?
200 plus, yes.
Wow.
And growing.
Wow. You're going to have to teach me how to sell that concept for my. Okay. All right.
No problem.
His primary subjects are how to get salespeople motivated and doing more business now. His specialty is helping sales organization double sales revenue in 12 to 24 months. Double sales revenue in 1 to 2 years. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, with that, John Chapin, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. I am delighted that you're here, and I'm looking forward to just letting you talk about sales and putting a good spin on the world of sales in terms of how it goes. Are you ready for the first time guest theme song?
Sure. Hit me. Hit us. Have you ever had a marching band welcome you to a broadcast before, John? I have not. That's a first, but now I'm feeling somewhat patriotic and fired up and ready to go.
It's the American Gumption show. So let's go at it. All righty. So as I promised, I'm going to let you let you have most of the rest of the time. I'll ask some questions, but maybe a good way to start is you said, I gave kind of a short little bio. What would you like to add to just sort of round out who you are overall as a person who's been in the sales world for, almost 30 years?
Again, it's, to give you an idea and talk overall kind of about sales as a concept. A lot of people talk about, how sales changes, how sales evolves, and this and that. And the reality is sales really hasn't changed. If you've done sales correctly over the years, sales is pretty much the same. The only thing that has changed is really technology has come in now and made things easier in some cases, actually more difficult in other cases, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But in reality, sales. What is sales? Sales is basically, taking ideas in your head, putting them in, someone else's head, and basically getting the same picture, getting on the same page with someone. And the reason why, and actually the pandemic did shift things rather dramatically, and I'll go into that. But sales overall, it is really simple. My dad was the number one sales rep in New England for over 30 years for IBM and Diebold Banking Equipment. My dad sold the first ATMs in New England back in 1976. And what made my dad number one in sales since the 1960s until, he officially retired, let's say in 2007, was that my dad, when you met my dad in business, you knew immediately my dad cared about you. My dad was focused on you. And that's kind of the key. And, people say, sales over the years, like, for example, book came out, it said the new relationship selling, and that book came out now, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago or whatever. And everybody talks about new relationship selling. They talk about you have to partner with your customer or your client. You have to be a peer with your customer or your client. Look, the reality is, if you were doing sales the right way back in the 60s, 1960s, or probably the 50s or the 40s or the 20s or any time, sales is pretty much the same. Sales is about focusing on the other person and doing what's best for them. So everyone's favorite radio station is WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Right.
So that's what everybody's thinking about. What's in it for me when you're talking to them? So what are they interested in? Now, what's happened is years ago, when people didn't have access to the information with the internet, and so they weren't up to speed on everything, they relied on the salesperson to give them all the information. What that meant was, could the salesperson tell a little white lie here and there? Could they cover things up? Could they give some misinformation and maybe make a couple more quick sales? Sure. Could they use a little bit more pressure and kind of hammer a prospect and say, hey, we have limited supply on this, or we have limited supply on that, or that's going on in the supply chain, or this is going on, or that's going on, or whatever it is. And the customer or the prospect couldn't really go online. They couldn't really check that out. They had to rely on the salesperson. So did it make it a little easier, for people who wanted to hammer people, for people who wanted to lie and maybe make some more sales and be super salespeople? Sure. Okay. But the reality is that wasn't the right way to sell. It was never the right way to sell. And the reality is, if you were taking advantage of people, over the long term, you probably didn't feel great about yourself. You probably didn't have long-term success. But the thing, again, with sales is, overall, as long as you're focused on the customer, you're doing what's best for them, you have their best interest in mind, they come before you, they come before your company, they come before your product, they come before anything. In fact, if you have to, if it's in the customer's best interest, you send them to the competition. Okay. Now, hopefully you're not doing that, you know, every day, every week, or you might want to go work for the competition. Okay. I mean, in the banking industry, I've worked in several industries. In the banking industry in 10 years, I just send the customer to the competition twice. But what does that person know at that point? They know I have their best interest in mind. I'm a trustworthy source and they can come back to me. So it's all about that. It's all about trust. Now with technology, you have some advantages of it. You have email. You can look people up online. You can get some information. You can make it more of a warm call than a cold call. I can research a person before I call them and I can find out some information on them. I can find some points of commonality and maybe talk to them about that. So technology is great. Email, it's easier to reach out, obviously send an email and this and that. The problem with technology is if we use it too much, it depersonalizes the relationship. We want to make sure that best way of selling is number one, in person, always, because you know, what is it? 55% of communications, body language, facial expressions, and eye movements. 37% is the way you say it, your tone, your things like that. And then 7%, I think, is the remainder, or roughly around there. Whatever the remainder is, 8%, that's the words you use in what you actually say. So it's in person is number one, on the phone is number two, or these days, Zoom, Skype, whatever that is. If you can do that, that's fine. Email is way down the line. And unfortunately, what a lot of people do these days is they use technology as an excuse to make it easier on them. They're uncomfortable reaching out to strangers. So what do? Instead of picking up the phone and calling, instead of going in person, shaking hands, they send an email. An email is like one of the worst forms of communication. The only way email is good is as a follow-up. So it's good for follow-up. It's good after the fact. But it's funny. I had, a lot of salespeople hide behind technology. They hide behind email. So I had a financial planner who was afraid to call on people. So we finally, we set a massive goal for him. We said, okay, let's make 5 phone calls a week. Now, back when I was a stockbroker in the 80s, I was making, my record was 236 phone calls in a day. Okay. But this guy, we're going to have him make 5 phone calls in a week. All he's got to do is reach out to existing customers and ask for referrals. Simple, right? So we get to the end of the week and I say, he's supposed to send me his numbers. And on number of calls, it says 3.5. So I called him and I said, hey, what, I'll, save his, I won't use his name, kind of a unique name. I won't use it. And I said, hey, 3.5. He said, yeah, I didn't make any calls. I sent 7 emails and I counted each email as a half. And I'm like, no. Okay, so there's email, people hiding me on email. The other thing is technology. Same guy goes online, researches someone he's going to call for 2 hours trying to get information on him before he picks up the phone and calls. He picks up the phone, he calls, he gets their voicemail, does not leave a message, so he's making all sorts of errors already, hangs up. 2 days later, when he decides he's going to try him again and call him back, he spends another half hour on, looking up. So information can help us, it can help us get information on people and this and that. It can also hurt us. Email is a great way to stay in touch in addition to the in-person, in addition to the phone calls, in addition to the snail mail, letters, in addition to any other creative things you're going to do to reach out to people and get in touch with people and things like that. So it's another, some people still send faxes or whatever. It's another medium to which to reach out. So if you do it in that regard, you can use technology correctly. It's great. It can really support you, but it can also hurt you. Now, Sales overall, like I said, it is always the same. It's being concerned about the customer. It's focusing on them. It's always doing what's best for them, taking care of them. And I've always said, in anything, when the pandemic came up, I've always said in any market disruption, in any economy disruption, 2008, the stock market crash in '87, banking crisis, whatever it is, right? Anytime there's an issue, the average salesperson cuts calls, cuts activity by 37%. Because they're afraid to make calls. They're thinking, the market. Oh, they're thinking about this. They're thinking about that. They're thinking about the other thing. So anytime there's any type of disruption, which we know on average happens every 7 to 10 years, the average salesperson, again, backs off. I always say that is the time to go on offense. That's the time when everybody else is backing off 37%. We developed the saying back in the 80s when the market crashed, and it was don't give up, double up. So you actually want to make more calls. You want to reach out to more people. Now, where the pandemic was a little bit different was a lot of people, especially in the sales community, some emails started flying around about, is it ethical to be selling right now? Is it really ethical to be calling people on the phone and selling right now, or visiting people and selling right now? So when I talk about going on offense, my offense was always, you do the same thing, you're making the same calls, but you're making more of them. And normally when you call somebody, you're identifying who you are and why you're calling. So when you call somebody on the phone, if I call you and for some reason you don't know who it is and you just happen to answer the phone, a lot of times we'll let those roll to voicemail, right? But if you pick up the phone and you call, you're thinking two things. Or when you look at your phone, you're thinking two things. Who is this and what do they want? So I say, as a salesperson, you're identifying who you are. John Chapin, ABC Company, if the company's relevant. If it isn't, it's just your name, John Chapin. And then your big fat claim, your what's in it for them, what's your biggest driver. So let's say I'm in insurance and I'm calling on workers' comp insurance. I'm calling companies. I might say, John Chapin, ABC Agency. Reason for the call, I'm saving companies an average of 37% on their workers' comp. I need 10 minutes to explain the program. Do you have 10 minutes now, or is tomorrow morning better, or whatever it is? With the pandemic, you had to change that a little bit because people were sensitive. People were, thinking a lot about the pandemic. The pandemic was pretty all-encompassing. I mean, it affected almost all of us, whether somebody died or, that we knew, or they were sick that we knew, or our business was taking a huge hit, or whatever it is. There were some big impacts. So the thing I told people is I told the salespeople, I said, you want to stay on offense, but your offense wants to be different. So let's go back to the insurance example. A lot of people with businesses were concerned about, did they have business interruption insurance? So, if their business was going to shut down, did they have insurance that was going to cover the lost revenue? A lot of people were thinking that. What's the average insurance agent doing? They're cutting calls, they're cutting activity by 37%. They're afraid to reach out to customers and clients and tell them they don't have business interruption insurance and all sorts of other things. So I said, look, guys, we're going on offense. First, you're calling your top customers because they're waiting to hear from you. And if it's bad news, it doesn't matter. You've got to deliver it. Honesty, integrity. You got to call them. So let's call your largest customers first, then your other customers. And then we're going to start reaching out to everybody else. And basically what you're going to say is you're going to identify yourself, but then instead of hitting them with a benefit that you might use to sell something, you're going to say, the reason I'm reaching out is I know a lot of business owners haven't been hearing from their agents and they have questions about business interruption insurance or whatever it is. So I'm just calling to be of service to you to potentially answer any questions I can answer for you.
Wow.
It's a totally different call. It's not a sales call, right? It's a relationship building call. You know, the end of that, no matter what happens, it's, hey, is it okay if I stay in touch with you? Great. Again, my name is, I'm with, oh, by the way, you know, I have an email list. I'm not going to bug you. It's going to be like once a month unless it's something major or whatever. I won't inundate you. Is it okay if I get you on my email list? Yes, no, whatever it is. Here it is. Okay, I'm going to follow up with you. Here's how I'm going to follow up. And then you put them in your pipeline and you follow up with them. But what they remember is that, you know, you reached out when they weren't hearing from their person. But as opposed to in all other situations, when, you know, the 2008 happened, when any other disruption happened, you were still on offense. You were still calling with who you are and what your number one benefit was to them and how you could maybe turn that into a sales conversation. The pandemic was the first time I've run into in 33 years where you shifted and you didn't make that first call like a sales call. You made that first call like a warm call, if you will.
A human being, a fellow human being talking to another human being in a time of uncertainty and unknowing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, so that in a nutshell, sales comes down to some basics, you know, from a sales end to salesperson end, it's two things. Those two things are activity. That's talking to as many people as possible about who you are and what you do. Number two is sales skills. It's knowing what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, being prepared for that, being scripted, being everything else. And then when it comes to sales from the dealing with a customer perspective, again, it's all about them. It's focusing completely on them, doing what's best for them. How can you be of service for them? Everybody is not your customer. You have a certain amount of people, you know, we run into this as speakers and everything else where, you know, we'll have a speaker friend that comes out with a book and, you know, you say, who's your book for? And they say, it's for everybody. Your book isn't for everybody. Okay. You know, I've got, it was funny. I had a guy who I met at a networking event who said, hey, I can save you money on your mortgage. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, no, I guarantee I need, you know, at some point, let's sit down, let's go to breakfast. I'm going to need like a half hour to talk to you about how I can save you money on your mortgage. I said, no, it's great. I said, but you can't save me money on my mortgage. He said, I guarantee you I can save you money on your mortgage. I said, well, it's funny. I said, because I paid my place off 15 years ago. I don't have a mortgage.
Yeah. So he didn't ask the basic question of, do you actually have a mortgage?
Exactly. You know, so you've got it. And that's the thing too, in selling, you know, especially I say on the first call, the first time you're talking to somebody, or, you know, let's say you go, you're not selling something right off the bat. You're setting an appointment, which a lot of times you're doing to talk to them, to meet them in person or follow up or whatever it is, and have that initial meeting. That initial meeting should basically be, you know, follow the 80-20 rule. You should be listening 80% of the time. You should be talking 20% of the time. And most of the time you're talking, it's going to be asking questions.
Yeah.
So a big mistake that a lot of salespeople make is they go in and they, you know, we call it show up and throw up in the business, where they show up, they throw everything out about their product, their service, their this, their that, or whatever. And within, you know, 7 seconds, the person's eyes are glazed over and they're hearing wah, 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 as you're going on and on and on, talking about a bunch of stuff they don't even care about. And, you know, and that ties into, quote, the old way of selling that people say, where people just used to hammer, give information, close, give information, close, give information, close. Again, if you were doing it the right way, 50, 60, 100 years ago, you were doing the same thing. You were going in, you were asking questions. Hey, you know, there are a lot of reasons I can give you why people do business with us. I'll get into that. Right now, I'm more concerned with you and what you're looking for. So, and that's assuming somebody asks the question of why you're here, or, what do you have, or, why, who are you, or whatever. And that, like, look, I can tell you a lot about us, the company, whatever it is. I'm happy to do that here in a bit, but I'm more concerned with you and what you're looking for. So, why did you decide to meet with me today? And then it's, just all the way down, having that series of questions, and they're going to change a little bit depending, but it's having the questions to find out how and if you can actually help someone, and all about them.
I have a series of questions for you. I'm not going to ask them all rapid fire, but I will. We'll just, you gave a lot of great information. You outlined the whole thing. But let's just kind of dive deeper on a couple of ideas. So one of the things that you mentioned on your website is that it's almost like a given that a salesperson has to have good interpersonal skills, personal relationship skills. So you don't talk, I'm sure you did somewhere about that. You talk about that, but maybe touch on what is the basic foundation, because what you focus more on are some of the specific skills. So it's almost like you gotta be like a certain type of a person. What does that person look like that you have to have in terms of the overall, personality style of a good salesperson?
Yeah, glad you asked that. It's a great question. You start with people skills. So I always say, whenever you are hiring a salesperson, you start with people skills. In some of my articles, people read my monthly articles or whatever, will know several times I talk about, here are the keys to, these two keys to success, or here are the traits of top producers, or here are the traits of this or that. And a lot of times I'll open that with, assuming you have someone with people skills.
Yeah.
Here's what else they need. Okay. So it starts with people skills. If you have, let's face it, there are, they give you the 4 classic personality types, right? You've got all, that 4, you got 7 billion people on the planet, and actually everybody's a different personality type, but they like to break them down to 4. The one that's the toughest as far as, converting into sales is what I call your engineer type. Sometimes it's your lawyer, accountant type, the real detail-oriented people, the people who should really be in a room by themselves, like crunching numbers and doing other stuff all day. Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory.
Mm-hmm.
Sheldon will never be a salesperson. Do not put Sheldon in the sales role. One of the issues in 2008 in particular was, so I'm in Toastmasters, some people know what that is, some don't, public speaking, things like that, and you're practicing. So I had an engineer who had come in, and he, came in because he's got to learn how to talk to people and this and that, because he's in sales. He lost his engineering job. Somebody told him, sell life insurance. This guy had no people skills. It's going to be a train wreck. I'm just telling you right now. So you've got to have people skills. Ideally, that's the ability to communicate. It's the ability to talk to people. And people say, you got to have the gift of gab. Have the gift of listening first. You want to be a really, really, really good listener, and you want to be able to pay attention to people. The gift of gab, again, maybe years ago, where you're talking 100 miles a minute or whatever, and you're hitting them with everything you got and hammering them and wearing them down. Maybe that'd work to a bit of a degree. But that said, you do need someone who can talk. You need someone who can communicate. You need someone who can think on their feet a little bit to some degree. And a lot of that comes down to knowing your product and knowing, again, what you're going to say in the different situations and things like that. but yeah, you're really looking for people that you like, that you can connect with. And again, you could tell have those people skills. So people skills, that's first and foremost number one. You have to have that before anything else.
Yeah.
And pretty much anything else can be taught.
I like what you said about listening, because when I was doing some personal transformation development work on my own, as I ended my career being an entertainer and transitioning more into a speaker and someone, of service to others in a different type of way, there was this question that I was asked is, are you interesting or interested? As an entertainer, I had to be interesting.
Right.
But as a person, I have to be interested. And so I that it's just a silly thing, but why do sometimes we get those questions that kind of like change everything? So that was like a real key thing. The other thing, and I think I was interested as when I was working as Gump, doing what I did. I just cared about people. I like people, and one of the things that people repeatedly said to me was, "Boy, I wish I looked like somebody, so I could do what you do." And I thought, it was a nice thought that they had, but it was like, it was actually a fair amount of effort to sit there and be interesting and interested at the same time, because you meet, I was meeting 1,000 people a day, and it was, it wasn't as simple as just looking like somebody. There was like a lot of, different things that happened. Anyway, so people skills, that's a given. You have to have that. In a fairly recent blog post that you wrote, you said that there's 2 character traits that all great salespeople practice on a regular basis, and they are responsibility and accountability. And responsibility is what I call gumption. And this is kind of an interesting story, John. When I wanted to become a speaker, before my Forrest Gump career was over, I hired a coach, a speaking coach, and this person said, nobody will hire you to talk about personal responsibility. That's what I wanted to talk about. And then I went, okay, I'll talk about gumption, which actually was a good thing that I decided to do that, because that's a unique word. But I basically redefined gumption to just be personal responsibility. So anyway, talk about responsibility and accountability in terms of why that makes a difference in a salesperson's life and career.
Yeah, well, a lot of salespeople, I'd say, are, let's take your typical Fortune 500 salesperson who's out there. A lot of salespeople, they're on their own for the most part. Like when I was in the banking industry, I was on the road all the time. That's what I was, supposed to be doing, was on the road. When I was, thinking of the other industries I was in or whatever, now you've got a lot of salespeople who worked remotely, even if they were in phone sales or they were something else that was remotely. So, if you're working remotely or you're out on the road, I mean, think about the discipline it takes, as a salesperson, and other salespeople out there relate to this. We all know the salesperson who, they thought they were going to get an order. They went in, they didn't get the order. They got shot down. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, and they go to the movies, and instead of making more sales calls. Or, if you're sitting at home and you've got to make X number of phone calls, you better be accountable to yourself, and you better be responsible. And that's why, sales is really, it's a business of commitments. It's a business of commitment to your boss, to your company, to yourself. If you're running your own company or doing something else, it's also one of commitment to your clients and your prospects. So I answer my phone at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. Okay. I respond to emails at all hours. Sales is something where you've got to be super responsive, and you've got to be willing to put, other people first and not be thinking about, you know what, I have a life too, and I'll do this 9 to 5 or whatever it is, because you're serving. Now, ideally in every job you have, you're serving. And the job you had, you're serving, you're entertaining, you're, whatever it is, right? But in sales, being in that service role, if you will, kind of the ultimate service role, you've got to be super responsive. You've got to be right on top of things. You've got to make sure that you're getting the calls in, you're getting done what needs to be done. And a lot of salespeople are lazy. That's the bottom line. And they don't want to make the calls. They want to do as little as they can to stay on the payroll and make just enough sales to stick around. And that's why that, and they also tend to be the personality type, which is bright, shiny object, squirrel. They're kind of all over the place. So when you're doing that, it takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of accountability. It takes a lot of responsibility to set up a schedule, have a set schedule, which is more like something an engineer type would do, the detail people, which tends to be the opposite of our personality type. But, it's very important to be accountable and responsible to your duties, to what you need to do, both for your boss, for the company to make the sales, and, to your family. Obviously, that one's usually a little easier for some people, but then to your customers and your clients. And I mean, let's face it, all great people we know, accountability, responsibility.
Yeah.
They're responsible for everything. So if you lose a sale and you say, I lost it because of price, we need to lower our prices. The competition, is lower prices than us or whatever. Well, guess what? Now you're not responsible. Now it's the job of the CFO or somebody else in the company to lower prices or do something else. Now you're not responsible for coming up with an answer to that objection, for doing anything else. So it gives you an out. So, whatever you're not responsible for, you don't take control of. If you're accountable and you're responsible and you say, no, that's my fault, and you take responsibility for that, I should be able to sell value. This is a better product. I should be able to sell it at a higher price. And that then you'll take, if you're responsible for losing that sale, then you'll take on that role. Whereas again, I see a lot of salespeople who they're just complaining. Our prices are too high. The market's not good. This and that. If the economy is responsible for your success and the economy sucks, or a pandemic happens or something else, why even bother getting out of bed in the morning? Right? There are people in every industry, in every situation, who thrive. And you ever noticed the top companies, and in my field, the top salespeople always thrive. It doesn't matter what new state regulations or government regulations they got hit with. It doesn't matter what the supply chain looks like, which is a challenge these days. It doesn't matter what anything looks like, what prices shifted, whatever. The top salespeople are always the top salespeople. The top people are always the top people. Why? Because they're accountable and they're responsible and they realize success is up to them.
John, in the last, we have about 10 more minutes left. Let's shift it and talk a little bit about you and how you specifically work with salespeople and what you do to help them. You've kind of given this overview of what the sales world is all like, some of the skills, personality traits, that sort of thing. But what are you doing today, day in and day out, to help people? You're not selling a direct product any longer. You're essentially coaching and helping other salespeople who are in that selling business. So what does your typical day look like, and how do you help people?
Yeah, so my typical day is, it's a lot these days. It's a lot of coaching calls. It's a lot of, I still go out, on some in-person calls and things like that with local companies and that. But just to give you an overall picture, before the pandemic, it was a few things. It was keynote speeches. So people might bring me in to temporarily kind of rev people up, get them going, give them some ideas that they can apply right away and get them fired up. and get them motivated for, they're going to be motivated for a day or two or something like that. Then I've got other people who bring me in for the entire sales team. And it might be anything from, like, again, an initial meeting where we dig a little deeper, usually after a presentation or after a keynote. And I'll work with them anywhere from one time to 6 months or a year. Those are the typical. I have some people who just keep me around, and they keep me around as a consultant that they can pick up the phone and call at 11 o'clock at night and say, this is going on. And so I've got, clients like that who individually will hire me, and I've been working with them for 10 years or 5 years and 3 years and things like that. And then I'll also deal with, I'll deal with teams and I'll deal with individuals. So somebody will say, hey, I have this new sales rep. They're coming on. I need to get them ramped up. I need to get them going. Or, I have this older sales rep. They're on the fence. I don't know whether or not they're going to make it. I need you to come in and see what you could do. So it's group, individual, anywhere from, again, the, quick, short-term, quick speech to drilling down and going through the whole sales process and giving a company the systems, the processes, working on them with their calls, with their answers to objections, with the whole sales. We come up with a sales playbook, a sales script book, and a sales proof book, which is their concept book. And we just give them a whole sales system. So anywhere from the quick fire up Zoom call, keynote, to, the whole thing, dealing with individuals or dealing with teams.
Are your clients, what is there certain products or certain areas that they work in? Are you dealing like with large companies, like Fortune 500 type companies, or more like small, more mom and pop type businesses, or, just privately held larger businesses? I mean, do you have like a specific area that you seem to enjoy working in more than others?
It's a little bit of both. So my background is it's pretty unique. When I was a stockbroker, I was doing for 6 years. I was doing basically all of my business over the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I was all phone. When I was in the textile industry, I was doing a little bit of both. I was doing mostly a lot of phone and marketing and things like that, and then follow up. And meeting some customers, doing that in person. When I worked in the banking industry for 10 years, that was all face-to-face. So I span the gamut, and I've been able to, come up with the commonalities of what all that have. And by the way, people say, oh, this person will be good at telephone sales. They won't be good at this. They won't. Look, if someone's good at sales, really good at sales, they can sell anything. You can put them in any environment. So the same dynamics apply to all that. For me personally, originally, the real estate industry picked me up because there was a guy in Toastmasters. He was a manager at a real estate place. He heard me give a speech about sales. He said, come in, talk to my team. I did, and boom. For the next 2 years, that blew up and just went crazy. But the funny thing was, they didn't pay. So I was selling product, and I was doing a bunch of that. And then insurance, a friend of mine in the insurance industry, saw my article, gave it to his boss. And then that went, so next thing you know, I'm going to these conventions nationwide and insurance, this and that. The nice thing about insurance was they called me, they said, we've been reading your articles. Do you speak? Yes. Okay, great. They didn't ask my fee. They said, great, here's our convention. Send us the contract, the agreement, whatever you need to send us, and whatever. Oh, okay. So I was in insurance for a long time. I still probably do 70% of my work in insurance, but then I also work in the heavy equipment industry a lot these days, which is John Deere, Kubota, Case, those, and people selling all the way from the high-end tractors down to the, lawnmowers and that type of stuff. So my industries these days are really insurance, and I'd say again the people selling the machinery like the John Deere tractors and the things like that. That's most of what I do.
What has been the most fun thing that about this whole career that you've had in that you've done a variety of different things? You went from industry to industry. You went from speaking to coaching to, mentoring people. I mean, what has been, maybe not the most fun, but what has been some highlights in terms of like things that, you look back on and you go, you know what, that really was satisfying and I enjoyed that.
It's the success. It's the feedback. It's the success, again, of other people. I love when someone calls me, they've had some daunting issue that, they've been dealing with it for 5 or 6 years, that they can't get through the gatekeeper, or this doesn't work, or people aren't getting back to them, or people are ghosting them, or whatever. I had somebody who, again, people kept ghosting him. He couldn't, and I said, okay, here's a line. I said, write this line down. Here's what you're going to say, and see what happens. He's like, oh my God. He called me back later in the day and he's like, oh my, I called 5 people. I said, they all got back to me, and then it's seeing the results too. When somebody comes back and I had an insurance rep who was, he was close to being fired. I don't know that he knew that, but they brought me in to see what I could do. He was a good guy, had the right attitude. I had a few things going on personally. I also work on mental toughness in the brain. That's key for salespeople. But that's a big one too, is when you impact someone's life to the point where not only do you see their sales take off, but their marriage is better, their relationship with their kids is better. Like everything snowballs because you improved that one area and gave them some tips. And again, I had another guy who was on the verge of divorce and had a tough situation with one of his kids in particular with special needs. And I started working with him a little over a year ago, and it was a year. It went a year, and attitude totally shifted 180 degrees. He's lighting it up. Great relationship with everyone around him. The boss now is happy. They took me to Legal Seafoods, and we had kind of a finishing lunch and everything else here a couple of weeks ago, and just to see the results and see the impact on people's life.
Yeah, that's great. So John Chapin, CompleteSelling.com. That's the website. People go to your website. What are they going to see? And I'm assuming it's easy for them to get a hold of you.
It is, yeah. So when they go to my website, the first thing they're going to see is, what are people looking for me to do? Increase their sales. So the first thing they're going to see is they're going to see a couple testimonials of somebody, a couple of people that I increased sales on. And then again, yeah, if you want to reach me again, and I think I see it there at the bottom of the screen, the CompleteSelling.com. If you just go, John Chapin, CompleteSelling.com, my website will come up. John Chapin at CompleteSelling.com is my email. But again, that's the easiest way to reach me. There's a toll-free number that's on the bottom of that. That rings, by the way, to my cell phone. So I'll get that right away. But yeah, I mean, what are they going to see? They're going to see how I can help them increase sales. But again, they can reach out, call me. Like I said, I answer emails. I answer my phone at all hours. So just reach out. If you think I can help, we'll have a conversation, see where that goes.
Give the final word on why selling is a noble and a good way for people to make a living and help others.
Yeah, without sales, nothing happens.
Yeah.
No one gets married without a sale.
Yeah.
You don't get a job without a sale. We think of sales as, the used car salesperson. A lot of times I'll ask people for adjectives and they come up with slimy, that, all this other stuff. Look, we're all in sales all day long. The better you can sell, the better you get along with people, the better you can sell, the better you can communicate with people, the better your life is going to be. You know, we've all heard it's all about people and relationships. Like 86% of your life or more is affected by other people. So whether you're in a courtroom, you're trying to make a sale to the parent-teacher association or organization or whatever they call it this day, you're trying to sell something to the town manager or the builder why you should have an addition on your house, or whatever it is. You know, you're trying to get a date. We're all in sales, and nothing happens in the business world until a sale's made. Products don't move, money doesn't exchange hands, nothing happens. Everything stands still without sales.
And in a personal world, nothing happens without sales either, right? So we all have
absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, you talk to me, had a conversation. You're like, "Do you want to come on the show?" That's a closing question. I said, "Yes." Here we are.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it, but I'll just throw it in there. The second biggest killer of sales is not being direct. You know, we just need to be direct with each other. It's not that hard.
Right. You know, you don't, people aren't mind readers.
Yeah.
They don't know. You know, we tap dance, we go around everything, and it's like, be direct. You know, I say be direct in a nice way. Don't be direct in tone, or, you know, sometimes you have to be, right? You know, if you're talking to your teenager or something, right? But you know, be direct in the questions you ask.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, absolutely. Very good. Well, John, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you'll come back and join us again at the American Gumption Show. This is great. Absolutely. I love the fact that Gumption is really personal responsibility for your thoughts, actions, and interactions, and sales is really just responsibility for the way you think. Boy, that is so important, the mindset of a salesperson, but then the actions, and then it's the interactions with others. So really, you know, good salespeople have gumption.
Absolutely. Amen.
All righty. Well, thanks, John. We'll see you again next time.
Thank you. Sounds good. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Take care. All right. Well, that was John Chapin, CompleteSelling.com. There it is. It's floating along. Whoops. Here. Wait, here it is. There it is, going across there, CompleteSelling.com. Check John out. Thank you, John, for joining us this morning. That's it for today's show. Thank you. I'll see you folks next week. No live show tomorrow, but we'll see you next week. All right. Have a great day.